white cog or white gear is a reference to technology, and it's supposed to be a reference to sequencing. So over here, you just see a single digit, if you will, and then over here, in the middle of the sequencing, you see technology being thrown into the center of consensus, essentially, right, or the consensus of the collective, right, and then coming out, uh, right, and so this is a reference to Haas's language around assistive over controlling tech design or approaches that we've heard Haas speak to very eloquently before, and we know is a big part of, all of the tooling that gets built into our systems design. And so I realized that the sequencing is extremely important to this, right? So, one of my favorite quotes that I reference in dialogue with folks is from Jacques Ellul, right? For this, I think, 1930s French uh, systems and technology studies person, right? I guess there's this whole field dedicated to the way, uh, uh, you know, um, science and technology come together or what have you. And uh, one of the things that's come out of those studies is the way that technology and socioeconomics co-constitute one another. And one of the quotes from Jacques Ellul is, uh, "Motivation predates invention at every step of development." Right, and it's a beautiful quote to illustrate how we get to factories. Up until today, they haven't changed much in a couple hundred years that they've been around. Um, where the human beings and ecosystems are an afterthought, right? The water systems are severely polluted up to today, right? The air systems, the soil systems, right? The people are fit into the cracks of these factories, right? You can see black and white photographs that look identical to modern day, digital camera photographs, in terms of the size and scale of industrial, scale, so-called innovation or technology or tooling, right? And so, to fit folks into the cracks as an afterthought is because at every step of invention there is a motivation, right, of extraction, right, extraction of labor, right. That this is also why you end up with one foreman and a bunch of unskilled laborers, right. This is built into each machine at every step of invention, right? And so it's interesting that we use this language of intrinsic motivation, right? But also it's interesting to think about sequencing when it whenever we're approaching any of our tech design, right? That that makes up the advocates tooling, but even tooling that comes out of what we might call the advocates ecosystem, right? Of what we can add to dialogue, add to the innovation, is this serious consideration for the ecological and human scale. And one of the best ways to do that is through sequencing, right? Understanding that things, while they may start from an individual scale, in order for it to become truly assistive technology rather than controlling or destructive technology, uh, we leverage the consensus of the collective, right? Or we leverage the dialogue of the collectives, the input on how that technology is designed, right? And so this is all the this image is trying to communicate what Haas has attempted to do for us up until now, and what he usually speaks to much more eloquently than even I can when thinking about software design. So. Um, yeah, that's what that's trying to say. I don't know if there's a way to say it or to depict it better or even say it better, but yeah, hopefully it makes sense too. Um, and then this,
Makes sense.
good. Um, Thank you, thank you. So this is the alignment and accessibility mapping that I spoke to earlier. This actually comes right from Hero, if I'm not mistaken. When thinking of things that Hero is usually speaking to in our sessions, mapping is something that came to mind, and all the dialogues that it sparked between us as a collective came to mind. And, the concentric circles of the Ganyagahaga, right, are a big way that we've described mapping before. It's the way I describe it to even the Dada folks to try to relate to some of the things that they're doing currently. But then you see this through line, right, all the way to the center. And we know through our dialogue that's a reference to the well or Wolf Clan and this functional accessibility right at the heart of decision making, matrilineal decision making. So yeah, this is what this is trying to depict. Hopefully, it makes sense for you guys a little bit easier than it makes sense for other folks that hopefully you guys can help me explain this too. Um, temperament and all of this is referenced in the indigenous context, right? The further you go in, the more refined your temperament is for more administrative or representative-like functions, right? In decision making, and so. Yeah, I don't know if there's any more I could say on it. There's a lot more we would say if this was actually an oral, recital, but maybe I'll be short here. Hopefully, you guys dig it this one as well. But yeah, again, that through line is one of the things we could speak to is the transformative potential, right, of that the accessibility of that through line, the the transformative potential being. The not just in the refining of temperament that happens organically, but um, the the access to the commons of voice, right? That I think Merrick has spoken to quite eloquently in the past, right? How actually having your voice heard and having dialogue thrown back at you based on that voice, based on your voice, is a part of the commons, right? People holding you accountable with to your voice, right, is another means of accessing the commons, right? So yeah, in a myriad of other ways, right? Uh, Upskilling, accessibility, all of this can be spoken to if we were really in a oral recital. But it's a way of it's nice because you realize these symbolism are maybe a means of just bringing folks into what we know have been our very important dialogues over the months, And so this last one is commons mapping, which is the other type of mapping that we know have come from our discussions around mapping, and again, a lot of times sparked from Hero. And so these are this is the symbolism that have come up with it to try to articulate it. I think a much more artistic person can do this much more justice. I think what I had in mind are some of these discs from from that Haitian Revolution context, or that these insipidity symbolisms that, when placed on a wheel or disc, can look very nice artistically and whatnot, and it ends up look like it's flowing in some ways, the symbols. So maybe we change this to more to the symbolism that we have so far flowing throughout, or maybe something to this effect. We can achieve some better aesthetic. But this is what I have for now. Yeah.
Were you talking about the last picture or the one before, just now?
The very last one.
Oh, right. Okay. I was still looking at the second last.
Yeah, I didn't really.
Oh,
I
sorry.
didn't really make it. Yeah, I didn't really make a distinction, and I realized I didn't really say much about it either. I just called it a disc, but it's yeah, just attempt to show flows, in the circle being the commons, and the infinity symbol in the center. But I think we can make it look a little bit better somehow, some way. I don't know, but
Because I was just wondering, the second last, that one looks slightly different to the rest. Like the rest are like white lines,
hmm
but that one has like shadows and stuff. And
yeah,
um, yeah, so every other one almost like a solid white lines or thin white lines.
hmm
So that one looked a little bit different to me. So what was the inspiration there?
I guess just the mapping of zoning of zones. I think of just broader lines, right? Zones of protection or what have you, right? You think of regions or what have you, and I thought that would be harder to depict with thin lines, maybe. So I guess maybe that's why I immediately thought of that. But I think um, you could do the same thing with just thin lines of concentric circles, but maybe it doesn't communicate um, the same thing aesthetically of like passing through different zones of protection. I'm not sure. But,
So what about the shadows?
I think that just allowed me to make the through line a little bit easier, uh, but also, yeah, it was just maybe a design choice at the time of that's fairly arbitrary.
Design
uh,
choice. See, you're
yeah,
very creative now.
yeah. I think it's just arbitrary. um, yeah, I think it's just arbitrary. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I had something in mind at the time that I'm blanking on. But
I have
uh,
a thought just to add to
yeah,
generally these pictures. Have you thought about maybe some of them are more like lively, so they are a little bit more animated, like more dynamic. So you kind of see the picture or the symbolism like a living kind of being almost or living system
hmm
because they are not just a still image, they are actually animated pictures.
yeah, for sure. I mean, similar thing that Merrick said, right?
These are all animated in my mind.
Yeah,
Oh, I might have missed that, sorry.
yeah, yeah. I think Merrick had a similar thing. It kind of we saw some motion to it or what have you. But were you saying we should put motion to it? Is that what you were saying, Hero?
I
Or
mean,
you
it
just
would make
saying?
sense, like to see how they are living, like animated, um,
No, no. Yeah, it would be fly. Yeah, I
would
think.
be
Yeah, I think.
like feels more, perhaps more. I don't know if humane is a word, but definitely more. Like then it's actually like a living ecosystem with a heartbeat kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think I made them in Figma too, so it may be possible to make animations right inside of Figma these days. Um, and these wouldn't be hard to turn into like little gifs if we really wanted to. But yeah, yeah,
Seeing him like pulse on a heartbeat. That's a cool. I like the
yeah,
heartbeat idea here. That's
yeah, it
I
is.
mean, these are supposedly ecosystem, right?
Yeah,
And um, I don't know, clans or ecosystem, um, and they are full of people who are active and living, maybe. So
yeah,
I think it will make it quite cool. Anyway, like conceptually, I think it will fit quite well because it's moving.
yeah. I
And you
know.
can see
Yeah,
like the ecosystem growing. Some of the arrows, do they go outwards or like do they move outwards? And the little infinity thing in the middle gets bigger as it get out, as the arrow get further out. I don't know. I'm just saying like the concept of the picture moving seems to fit um, the the symbolism that is trying to represent.
For sure, for sure, for sure. No, there's definitely motion in mind when making them, so I think it fits for sure. Yeah, hell yeah.
Thinking too about like having, because that's like a whole new that's a whole new medium for you to learn as an artist. You just now mastered the Figma 2D drawings. Now we're making you do animation as well. But what it
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, but what it brought to mind is like having like other artists come in and maybe portray these same, almost like wampums, but same like ideas, right? Or same points in the or same points in like different mediums or with like different images, and wondering about tracking, like, because that's probably something that would be, fun. It's like putting it in your own words, right? It's almost like an oral constitution, but by doing different symbols. Or like watching them, watching different people express the same concepts with like different drawings, and something to do with tracking the morphology of that. I don't know. Have you thought about that, or like things on that?
Yeah, no. I think this is a beautiful entry point to like getting folks familiar with using symbolism to to track morphology of things. I think it may be a whole other set of symbolism, or a set of symbolism within the symbolism, so to speak. But yeah, for sure, I'm excited to get to that point. To say the least. And when you're it's kind of built into data, a little bit of what you were saying. I'm sure if I replicated these images on data immediately, folks would respond with their own drawings of these of similar or iterations of these of these images. So maybe that's a means of getting more input and things like this as well. The data folks are they may not even know how close they are to some of the work that we're doing. I know they know a little bit, but they're very much at the heart of a lot of what we talk about quite often. So I've been itching to find a point of collaboration with them beyond some of the tooling stuff that we have in mind as well, like more community merging stuff. Familiarizing them with what we have going here. I think they'd appreciate it in the same way we do, right? As almost like a reprieve from the what can be ubiquitous in this space, right? Of just a little bit hyper market focused discussion, or hyper competition, focused structures, or hyper money, based dialogues, right? We really almost like an insulated space here, while being able to leverage a lot of the overlapping values that we have with folks in the ecosystem as well. And I don't know. Maybe this is a point of showing, right, in a deep way, how seriously we've been thinking about some of this stuff, while merging some of the creative ideas here as well, right? Some of the images, stuff that just come to mind, right? You guys don't know, I've just drawn horrible images on data before, and other folks will like immediately start like what they call visual conversations on data, where you have all these fine artists like do their interpretation of what you just did, or iterate on it with their own version, put their own funk on it. And yeah, this might lead to some interesting things if we attempted it. I thought about it even just doing it organically, right? Just as an update of what we're up to. So maybe that'll lead to something, organically as well. Similar to what you just said, Merrick. I don't know. But yeah, in the meantime, I'll probably be. I don't think it would be too hard to learn, how to animate some of this on Figma. I think it might just take a video tutorial or two. But yeah, thank you guys for the time today. This is important stuff, so I'm glad we got to speak to it. I know it's not just added to the document without some of this dialogue attached to it. Hopefully, you guys can pass the word to Ryder and Juliet. I know that'll be important to getting it through to the women's clans, and so I think it'll this type of stuff too shows how you know the communication between the clans is going to be a constant, even though there's autonomy in the decision making. Right? I don't think there would be anything wrong with one of us or myself communicating what's going on in these symbols in a women's clan session, and then like leaving before like any decision making processes happen. Right? We see Gazik Ganzadio do this with the Life Givers Nation in respect to learning some of the protocols. And this wouldn't be too much different in terms of the folks that are more unfamiliar with some of these concepts that we've been spending hours on, right? So it's kind of unfair to ask them to look at these without even without this exposure to what we just did today, and like just wrap their heads around it. So yeah, I think a nice, well-rounded issue to get us in the flow of things in these autonomous processes and all the nuances therein that may be counterintuitive at first, but I think when it comes down to it, perfectly acceptable nonetheless. But yeah, it's exciting, right?
Incredibly. It's very exciting. Thank you,
So,
Harold.
can I take it back
Yeah.
one level, almost like step out a little bit? Do these symbolism, like from today's session, right? It little bit feels like instead of, for example, and tell me if my interpretation is a little bit off. So I'm feeling from today's session like, for example, instead of a indigenous system 101 lesson, talk from talking history, right? Like um, origin and all the history about indigenous clans and stuff like that. But today I feel like almost like we are still doing it, but it's like going through a different vehicle, like because there are pictures now, and then we are I don't know what the right word is, but we are also still talking about the system design, but leveraging these pictures to communicate with the audience instead of without any materials at hand. But now we have some materials which are these pictures which you can talk around it and connect to that the system design and maybe touch on the historical context. So it's still a talk, but almost like in a different way. Does that sound right?
For sure, I think it ends up having that function for fairly organically, but I think a lot different than what would happen today is the more emphasis on the reciprocity, right? Like I think fairly intentionally limited myself or just merely referenced things that were discussed before. Um, I think that if it was like we were actually in the process of it with in the collective with everybody, um, and it was a live recital, what happens is not just an explanation of the symbolism, but then like an opening up of what that sparked in people's minds, and then everybody throwing their 2 cents into each image, right, or each concept, each law in the native context, right, and so these are ways that we are approaching advocates, right? This is what a code of conduct is, and this allows us to, you know, have some real dialogue on it, and um, so yeah, I think that's a little bit of a difference in the way it would look, right, in terms of uh, uh, all of what you said, right? I think it has that function, but I think it would look even I think it would be even more. I think it's going to be even more amazing, right? To like, maybe folks who are a little bit, haven't been in these dialogues with us, for example, when they add their own perspectives to it, when they add their own, and there's a dialogue that ensues from it, or and like, all types of dialogue is welcome, and so like the things that can organically come from that, I think is what it will look like, and it'll hopefully have an organic, you know, educational effect that you just referenced, and hopefully it makes it so that it's not like all the different steps aren't felt, right? That consciously, I should say, but they're achieved, some of the things that you mentioned, because yeah, I think a lot of the stuff will be organically spoken to, some of the history, some of what we're doing system design wise, um, you know. The Web3 focused perspective, it's all tied in, and so people will get all of that pretty organically, hopefully, but also hopefully a real good sense of like the culture building we've been doing, you know. But yeah. But yeah, I think you're spot on, in terms of like naming that it has that function,
I think intentionally or unintentionally, I feel like this is quite a, I don't know, to me at least. Um, Maybe it's just something not physical, but something tangible, almost, but internet, like on the screen. Something tangible to talk around feels, I don't know, just slightly more, maybe interesting is the word. Like maybe it can help people gather their attention, perhaps, rather than if we just talk. Maybe having something like this, yeah, just I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah. There's something ceremonial about it, right? And maybe that's what you're getting to, right? Like
I'm not even thinking about ceremonial part. I'm just
mm,
thinking about how people feel in the audience, or how people feel when they come together.
mm,
You know, governance or not, or indigenous or not. Like this topic could have been about maths, um,
yeah,
or about space,
right.
instead of somebody just talking about space, right? That
Hmm.
person is using images and then talk about space.
Right.
So it's like it adds a little bit more
Meaning.
effectiveness.
Yeah, I think it's meaning, right? And that's what I think of what I mean by the ceremony, right? Not necessarily like a ceremony literally, but like the kind of the essence of what you of like some of the things you feel in a ceremony where things have more meaning, for whatever reason, right? Because they've been deemed this sacred, they've been given this sacredness, right? And you know, a lot of what these symbolisms are inspired by, the histories, the it's fairly sacred, to myself, right? And hopefully to others as well. When some of the weight of those histories, some of the context that we're referencing, right, is really grasped or understood, and I think that brings a whole lot of meaning. And then to put ourselves in a continuation of what are efforts that are no joke, right, in terms of paradigm shifts for an entire global economy, right? Like these are the precedences that we're referencing, or even the native precedents of sustainability before that, and diplomacy, autonomy, all these different things, right? Like these are fairly sacred things to be able to participate in, and to be able to try to achieve together, to opt into together, right? Like I think sometimes a trustless Web3 environment lends itself to a lack of I had the word right on the tip of my tongue, but I almost want to say like it lends itself to a lack of recognition of our individual and collective agency, and like how precious it is, right? Like to opt into well, to opt into efforts, together, right? To opt into achieving something, as ambitious as what these ecosystems are trying to achieve. It's a fairly, for risk of sounding corny, it's a very beautiful thing to be able to have access to, and so to like build that meaning into the symbolism together. And I think is a lot of times what the dialogue does. But to some of the points from Merrick and Ryder, like actually, designing the symbolism together is a big part of it as well. Which is why any additions to this will be important, and any additional symbolisms will be important, to the process as well. But I think like the building in of all of that intention, all of that meaning into the symbolism, and having that to talk around, like you said, it maybe it makes the intangible that much more tangible, right? And I think that's one of the biggest overlaps we've been excited about, right? With the whole NFT wave thing, and the indigenous modes of wampums and symbolism and tracking of morphologies and things like this. But yeah. I think you're right, Hero.
Yeah, cool
Yeah.
stuff.
Hell yeah. But yeah, I'll let you guys go. Thank you kindly for enduring me as always. I don't know, how long have we been here? What the hell? Shit, that's 2 hours, huh? Shit. All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you. That was a fantastic 2 hours.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Yeah, I mean, if more things come to mind in terms of symbolism, important concepts, Merrick, I'll be thinking a lot more. I know, I think you've contributed. All of us are involved in every one of those concepts that are depicted. Like, all of our voices are in discussions that make it so that we can say, look, this is what we've been speaking to. But yeah, think of anything more, Hero. Think of anything more. These are just kind of the first things that come to mind when thinking about the things you guys say. So I'll be thinking more about what you guys say, what other folks say in these sessions, and try to tap into some of the heavier stuff, and make use of it for in our processes.
So was today oral recital, or was it not?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
I think it gives you like a little. I guess it gives us a little of a glimpse you know, because it is a description of the symbolism that's going on. But a lot of times today, even though it was 2 hours, and this shows you why the, the longhouse the Constitution recitals are, you know, days and days or months maybe. Is I just referenced a whole lot of times today. I was just like, remember when we talked about this? Remember when we talked about that? And like, you guys can just like it's loaded. Like you guys know what I'm saying when I say that. Like you guys have whole conversations in your head that you can, you know, reference and understand what I mean. But other people, I'd have to spell all that out. So this 2 hours would probably turn into 4 hours if I really spelled all of that, what we've already talked about out. um, and it wouldn't just be me talking, hopefully, right? Like people who are newer to the concepts would be like, "Hey, but what about this? And like, isn't this supposed to be trustless? That and what isn't this isn't this doesn't decentralization mean this and that and you know, and so it'll lend itself to dialogue that maybe it's the first time that it happens and maybe there's some realizations about the symbolism that we wouldn't be able to speak to without that dialogue, right? And that's what makes up a recital. It's the collective. It's not just the one person talking at the collective. It's not the three people who already understand it the most, in an echo chamber with themselves. It's not, it's this reciprocal thing, uh, folks adding on to the interpretations of these concepts. Uh, yeah. So, I, you know, I, when I got to the symbolism part, I think I wanted to speak to a little bit more, and here, even as I'm trying to speak to a little bit more again, I think for a third time, I keep missing the language that I had on the tip of my tongue to describe the distinction between what the what we did today and what would be happening in the recital. And I think it majorly comes down to the I keep saying reciprocity and dialogue about the concepts, but it's it's also that shared meaning that I think you were speaking to, uh, Hero, right? Like there would be like new meanings that I think it would feel a little bit closer to what our sense making sessions usually are, right? Where like it almost feel like a song building, on the really really productive days. And then like the next day, Haas will have like a whole implementation ready, like those type of days, where like it might start off like slow, like the song is building, but then by the end of it, like we're all like waiting for our turn to get in and put our own funk on the conversation, on the dialogue that might turn into implementation, right? And that's what the oral recital will feel like, I think, right? That's what the recitals that we've seen remotely, on the most energetic days, that's what they feel like, it has that council feel, where something new gets engendered, gets created through the collective. And so, not to say that didn't happen today. It did, but I think it. I think that when I intentionally skipped a lot and just referenced what we've already talked about, it it also intentionally, like even skipping to the next one quickly, right? The next image quickly, like that takes us away from our usual feel in these sessions when we're happy to just like, if Uncle comes in and he has something for us to sink our teeth into, like we're happy to just stay there for as long as it needs. And that's what happens in each wampum or each law in the indigenous law recital, right? And not just with the one person taking their time, but with each person taking their time, right? And you're very much encouraged to use your voice if something came up in your head, because if you're not using your voice, you're not using your power. in your what could have been there for the collective to learn something new, it's not there any longer, right? And so I know I emphasize reciprocity and dialogue as a distinction, but it's really this continuity of mind that becomes solid in this collective input of meaning into the symbolism. Yeah, that's the best way I can say. Yeah, yeah. So I'm excited to see if we can pull it off, and if I'm not mistaken, the way it works, right, is like whoever can speak best to the concept is who speaks to it. If I'm not mistaken, I've heard the Longhouse. I vaguely remember the Longhouse saying this. In the Longhouse context, we usually just see Stewart do it, but in the context, right, where these protocols were in full swing, the nations weren't as disturbed by genocide. It was the folks who could speak to it, and eventually anybody, and everybody speaks to it, right? As there's like a main reader of the symbolism, and then everybody gets to put their voice in. But yeah, there's with some of these things on mapping, I think of Hero. With some of these things on Haas and the legal stuff, I think of Juliet, and the assistive stuff with Haas, and so on and so forth. We can think of like that for each other as well as this thing gets fleshed out, and we think about how it actually looks when we're doing it. In addition to some of the nuances we talked about in terms of this collective meaning embedding, or however we wanted to. I gotta remember that language to not forget it or scramble it up too much, because it's hard to articulate like why is it so what makes it so distinct from this or that. But yeah, thank you, Hiro. Thank you for forcing that out of me.
Cool. Yeah, we'd love to have our first session of oral recital sometimes, or unless you feel like we need to have this session again with more people before we do a proper oral recital.
Well, I think we can get it into the active issues, right? It has to get in there anyway.
Oh, right. I see. Yeah.
If it's like can become a structural thing that we implement, I have to get everybody's voice on it, and maybe that's the good time to actually have it too, right? Like one in the final step of the consensus flow, it should have everybody involved, and we're supposed to be encouraging real time sessions anyway with the active issues flows, and so this will be one of the more it'll be a nice usage of the clan design, hopefully to engender the participation, right? So yeah, I mean, and with you guys, enduring this today, if you feel that much better in communicating the concepts to go along with these images, being able to reference the conversations we've had and knowing what I was getting at in the attempt of them, we can help its way through the active issues flows, and by the time it gets to where everybody's supposed to be sitting together in council, folks will have an idea, just like you guys have an idea now of what's going on there, and it'll be a chance to do it all together, potentially too. So thank you guys. I mean, it's a big step that you guys were here today, because now it allows us to move forward on that with this issue. I guess that was a blocker to getting this issue through that we didn't necessarily see. I think that's why I was itching to get some of these images done, because it came out of our dialogue, right? Even these images, realizing that we would need something as a catalyst in the oral protocol. So it's a nice step to get by. Thank you guys for being here again. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's incredible stuff. I mean, like, there's so much here, and it's an honor to be this close to it. And yeah, to hear it, yeah, blows my mind, and I could say lots more, but thanks.
Thank you, man. Thank you kindly. Yeah. Let's do it, man. It's exciting stuff. I can't wait to see it in motion. So yeah, it's much gratitude for you guys. You know, being able to do some due diligence to this. Articulating some of this as we go through it. It's priceless. It's priceless stuff. To to know that you guys, that this is clear in your guys' minds too. It really is priceless stuff. Because then it can get communicated. Even when I'm sleeping potentially. Right? So yeah, I can't thank you guys enough. So yeah, let's see what happens. Maybe I think we're at the stage now where I think all of the issues are pretty much wrapped up in a nice bow, right? We have a hero's diagram. I know you're still maybe doing some final touches on that to go with supplementing the journeys issue.
I mean, it's never like finished really, any of these diagrams, because they will get iterated. It's just when it's good enough to be turned into an active issue, and then it will evolve more from there actually. But as long as it's not too early and it's like ready to a degree, then I think it's okay to go.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the issues are about that stage now. The conflict resolution being pretty much ready since the last time we tried the flow. So these two now, maybe we can put 3 at a time through the issues and see how folks handle that, and see how productive the flow can be. Because I think they're getting all they're readying at a similar pace now. Others might take longer, like this code of conduct stuff, explaining of these images and such. But these images, I think, start to wrap up in a nice bow the oral code of conduct issue to be passed through the active issue. So yeah, maybe we start gathering folks in Men's Clan as best as we can, and the women have been doing so already. And yeah, hopefully they have I think they have a session tomorrow, so hopefully they have a productive session, and these issues are nice for them. Maybe we lend a, we mentioned to Ryder or Juliet that because they weren't here today, we mentioned that we're here if they need us for any walking through of the images. That it shouldn't be a blocker for them to pass this issue through their clans if they wanted to. Just because they haven't. That maybe we can be there to help them at that part of the issue, whether it's asynchronously or real time. But yeah, I think we're right on a precipice here, guys. Yeah. Yeah. It's been productive. Thank you kindly, y'all.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for all the help, all the work on the diagram here. I see you still, touching it up, and yeah, I'll just keep an eye on it. But yeah, thanks for your day. Thanks for your time, and have a beautiful rest of the day, y'all.
Yeah, thank you, Harold, for sharing that. It's pretty cool.
No, thank you. I'm glad you guys. I'm glad it was clear. You know me. I aim low. Yeah. All right. Love y'all. Have a good day, y'all.
You have a nice day. Bye.
Peace.
Bye.
Peace.